Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, Greg Anthony here, and glad you're back on the Investigative Journal on this Tuesday, February 14th, 2017 day on our calendar. And before I get into the truth about Valentine's Day and its pagan roots, let me give you the Jesuit quote of the day. In fact, I have two quotes, one from a well-known figure and another from someone you may never have heard of before. Now, on my show, I've given you quotes by John Adams, and this is one I've never given you. I found this, and it's also interesting that on November 4th, 1816, Adams wrote an anonymous 4-volume work on the destructive history of the Jesuits. And where is it? I never hear it in any of the history lessons I got in college, or even the great books written about the American Revolution and our founding fathers. Well, he had this to say, a quote you probably haven't heard. Quote, "This society, the Jesuits, has been a greater calamity to mankind than the French Revolution or Napoleon's despotism or ideology. It has obstructed the progress of reformation and the improvement of the human mind in society much longer and more fatally." Unquote. That was John Adams in a letter to Thomas Jefferson. Now, a guy you probably haven't heard of is a little-known artist named John Reynaga. That's spelled R-E-Y-N-A-G-A. And here's what he said. Quote, "Expose the Jesuit order and learn about the global genocide. Speak out, even when you have to say, and what you have to say is not popular." Now, I checked out John because I wondered who was this guy. And on his, he has a number of little artist websites, but he said this about what's going on in our world today, and I thought I'd read it to you. He said, quote, "All you have to do is investigate what you are told. That's all. It's very time-consuming, but truth fears no investigation. You want to believe official stories? Great. Why not research the subject at hand and know the facts about it? The truth of the matter is that there is a criminal global control, and we are lied to every single day of our lives. Our rights and our futures are being destroyed. Please examine evidence, be like a detective, and don't believe anything unless you have verified it with your own research to the best of your ability. There are a lot of shills out there, and you have to be the researcher. No one else can do this job for you. Humanity is literally becoming enslaved by those in power. The criminal global control works through deception. Learn about how Freemasons are used to being able to lie to you, and learn the history of the Jesuit order. The media is controlled garbage, and the alternative media is controlled opposition." Boy, well said, John. And what I want to say is that's why I call my show The Alternative to the Alternative Media. Because in my work as a mainstream journalist, then having to go to the alternative media when the internet cropped up, I had to learn the hard way about controlled opposition, and I sure did. And I've done many shows on the subject, but that's for another day. So let's get to my main topic of discussion, and that is the truth about Valentine's Day. Now, before I do that, let me mention one story that I have to mention today. And if you live in any part of the country outside of California, it may not interest you, but it's a huge story breaking right now. And let me explain it to you. I'm way down in Southern California. I live about 8 miles from the Mexican border. And there's a dam up in Lake Oroville. California is a huge state. And if you go about, 6 to 7 hours above Sacramento. I believe that's where it is. It's in the middle of our state. There's the biggest, highest dam in our country in Lake Oroville. Now, in the last couple days, there's been words spread by our media and also by the government that the dam is breaking. 200,000 people up there have been evacuated, and this morning it's getting even more serious. Now, people don't realize this, but that dam provides most of the water for Central and Southern California, including LA and San Diego, etc. And if that dam broke, it would be catastrophic proportions. I mean, flooding in catastrophic proportions in California. They say 100 feet of water would spread and demolish towns nearby. Now, the question I have, and it hasn't been answered, how would that affect the water coming to these areas, the Southern California area where most of the people live? So it's a huge story here, so follow it. And as we speak, the dam is breaking right now, and they're talking about why. The reason is it was built in 1950, and it hasn't been taken care of. And so while people in California are claiming to want to leave the union, and they're all worried about Donald Trump's immigration policy, you better worry about that wall of water coming your way first. Okay, let's get to the truth about Valentine's Day. Okay, before I get into the pagan roots of Valentine's Day, I have to be honest with you. I never liked Valentine's Day, even before I knew it was a pagan holiday. And let me tell you why. And my dog Max here is, I have to do something here quickly. Just one moment. Okay, I got that straightened out. Ever since I've lost my other dog, Miss Moose, about 3 weeks ago, she passed away. Max sits right next to me now. He doesn't want to leave my side, and he falls asleep during the show. Can't blame him. And he somehow gets these dreams and starts kicking and running, and he was kicking and running against a patio door, and I had to stop that. So back to what I was saying. Before I get into the pagan roots of Valentine's Day, and that's what you get when you do a live show. Before I get into the roots of Valentine's Day, the pagan roots, I have to admit and tell you the truth. I never liked Valentine's Day, even before I knew it was a pagan holiday. And the reason was when I was in high school, I wasn't very popular with the girls. And let me tell you why. I always looked 10 years younger than I really was. And so the girls didn't want to go out with a kid who looked like he was in grammar school when he was in high school. And they usually preferred these guys that were, they looked like they were 30 years old when they were a senior in high school. And so I never got any Valentine's cards from girls. Nobody sent me anything. And back then, girls would send Valentines to guys they wanted to date, etc. You know the high school situation. I never got any. And so I felt I didn't like it. It was a day I wish just disappeared. And even when I sent a Valentine to a girl, she never responded. And in fact, I remember sending a couple Valentine's Day, then being turned down to go to the prom. Boy. Things changed, though, as I got older and finally started to shave. I think I was in my 20s or something. But anyway, so you can understand why I didn't like Valentine's Day. So it was natural for me to research this holiday. Now, I say very bluntly, and let me start out with this statement, because I've done this kind of show many times on many other pagan holidays like Easter and Christmas. And I would ruin people's holidays. I'm not intending to ruin your holiday. I'm just asking you, before you go out and buy candy and all this stuff, think about where this came from. I enjoy doing that. And I looked for other people who thought the same thing. And somebody said this on a video. And I'm going to read it to you. And then he quotes the book of Revelations. So we'll start with the Bible. And then I'm going to allow someone else who also discovered that this was a pagan holiday to tell you about it. Because frankly, I've said it many years, and so I'm going to let somebody else do it today, but I thought it'd be interesting. But here's what I found. And this man says this. He says, "Do not buy this lie anymore, along with other traditions, namely Christmas, Easter, Halloween, etc., all of which are deeply rooted in paganism." And so he then goes right into this biblical quote. And let me read it to you, because I completely forgot about it. But he says this. Oh, here we go. Let me see here. Let me shut that off. And he says, "And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise any more. The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones, and of pearls and fine linen, and purple and silk and scarlet, and all thine wood, all manner vessels of ivory, and all manner vessels of the most precious wood, and of brass and iron and marble, and cinnamon, and odors, and ointments, and frankincense, and wine, and oil, and fine flour, and wheat, and beasts, and sheep, and horses, and chariots, and slaves, and souls of men." Revelation 18:11 through 13. And then he makes a point of, boy, people are making a killing on this holiday, right? The merchants are. Have you seen all the commercials? Oh, I'm going to mention a few. They start out with, you ever see that one about the Vermont Teddy Bear? You're supposed to spend $100 and buy this 7-foot tall teddy bear for your girlfriend. Now, why would you need to do that? I don't know. And then they say it's better than candy. It is better than flowers. And then there's the flower commercials. Then there's the candy commercials. Then there's the other commercials. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And I say boycott all of this, as they said in Revelation 18:11 through 13. All right. Now, the truth behind Valentine's Day. Let me just give you an overview. And let's stay biblical here. Another man pointed this out to me. When God says he wants you to live life abundantly, John 10:10, does that include celebrating a festive, seemingly harmless holiday like Valentine's Day? The God who gives us everything, life, food, drink, and the ability to think for ourselves, surely approves of Valentine's Day, the holiday for lovers, to exchange gifts, right? Is that right? Well, don't be so certain. Do not assume anything. Do not even take this article that he wrote, or what I am saying right here. Go to the history books and encyclopedias. Go to the Bible. Then you will know the real truth behind St. Valentine's Day, and you will know that God expects you to do about it. So what I'm saying here is, when I say, oh, don't celebrate Valentine's Day, don't do it because I say it. Do it because of the research you do, then decide what you do. Now, it's funny, I decided I didn't like it for selfish reasons when I was younger. But now I realize that I've made my decision, and I'm not going to tell you because I don't want to sway you. I don't want you I don't want to make up your mind for you. But like Christmas and Easter, like Halloween, New Year's, and other holidays of this world, St. Valentine's Day, I think, is another attempt to whitewash perverted customs and observances of pagan gods and idols by doing what? Sanctioning them, Christianizing them. As innocent and harmless as St. Valentine's Day may appear, its traditions and customs originate from two of the most sexually perverted pagan festivals of ancient history. And I've said this before, it's called Lupercalia, Lupercalia, and the feast day of Juno, it's Februata, Februarta. I told you I never liked the month of February for two reasons. First, I could never spell it when I was a kid. I would spell it February, and I would even say February, and my teachers would say, Greg, it's February. I didn't like it. Then I got confused on the days. Some days it's 28, then 30. What is it, 29? 26? I hated that month. Now celebrated on February 15 through, now some say 13 through 15, Lupercalia, known as the Festival of Sexual License, was held by the ancient Romans in honor of Lupercus, god of fertility and husbandry, protector of herds and crops, and a mighty hunter, especially of wolves. The Romans believed that Lupercus would protect Rome from a roving band of wolves which devoured livestock and people. Now, instead of me telling you all this, let me turn to this video I found. And this gentleman he calls himself the Eternal Church of God, had this to say about Valentine's Day. He published this on September 9th, 2015. I have not listened to it, so let's be surprised ourselves. I like to surprise myself sometimes. And if he says something I don't agree with, or you don't agree with, write it down and we can discuss it. But let's see what he has to say about the truth about Valentine's Day.
A program about you and your future. Ladies and gentlemen, on February 14th of each year, millions of people around the world celebrate a holiday of love known as St. Valentine's Day. The Greeting Card Association estimates that approximately 1 billion Valentine cards are sent out during this time of year. The U.S. National Census calculates that Americans gobble down nearly 6 billion tons of candy annually at a value of $16 billion, and a large portion of this is consumed during Valentine's Day. But the buck does not stop with cards and candy. In February of 2004, jewelry stores sold $2.4 billion worth of precious stones and metal. And according to the Floral Index, 110 million roses are sold on Valentine's Day. Yes, a love fest seems to engulf the minds of men, women, and children during this time, but while this holiday is designated as a celebration of love, in reality, Valentine's Day has absolutely nothing to do with the true love of God. Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to learn that, like so many of our traditional holidays, St. Valentine's Day is far from wholesome, and its celebration is filled with a dark history of paganism. Upon tracing the roots of Valentine's Day, we're going to find a celebration that dates back to the very beginning of paganism itself. Many historians and religious scholars have followed this festival all the way back to Ham's grandson, Nimrod, the founder of Babylon and the Babylonian mystery religion. The Bible, in fact, speaks of Nimrod, and it refers to him as a mighty one and a mighty hunter, as Moses writes. And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. The name Valentine comes from a Latin word, valens. This means strong, powerful, or mighty. And Nimrod was such a mighty one, and therefore he became the subject of innumerable legends. Along with his mother Semiramis, he was worshipped as a god for thousands of years after his death, and traces of Nimrod's worship are still found in many religious practices today. The wide influence of Nimrod's religion, it's the result of something that occurred during the time of man's early history. When the people of the earth all spoke one language, God punished them as they were building the Tower of Babel. The project was then abandoned after the people could no longer communicate, speaking different languages. They then scattered throughout the earth. However, wherever these people went, they took Nimrod's mystery religion with them. In their new locations, they created false gods and observed unholy rituals based upon what they had learned in Babylon. As a result of the wide dispersion, and the fact that the people spoke many different languages, Nimrod, he came to be called by many different names. He was known as Asar, Dumuzai, Orion, Pan, Gilgamesh, Osiris, Eros, Cupid, Baal, and Marduk, and this is just to name a few. Speaking of Nimrod's infamous influence, Ray Stedman states the following in his article, God's Funnel. The account zooms in on an individual named Nimrod, who is called a great hunter, but he was more than a hunter of wild animals. The Jewish Talmud helps us here, for it says that he was a hunter of the souls of men. Nimrod, therefore, introduced a perverted, degraded form of religion into the world, It began at Babylon, spread to Nineveh, and can be traced in history as it subsequently spread throughout the whole of the earth. Thus, in this man Nimrod, we have the seed of idolatry and false religion coming in again after the flood. Nimrod was said to be the spiritual heart of Babylon. In the Babylonian tongue, the word for heart is Baal. Baal, a false god whose worship is condemned in the Bible, is really just another title for the founder of apostate religion, Nimrod. And so, Nimrod gave rise to the pagan gods Lupercus, Pan, Februus, and Faunus, and all of these were associated with a later Roman festival called the Lupercalia. This pagan holiday ultimately evolved into our modern Valentine's Day. It was originally celebrated on February 15th, with festivities also occurring on the 14th. Lupercus was the god of the shepherds, and he was known as a mighty mountain wolf hunter, a title similar to the description of Nimrod found in the book of Genesis. Coincidentally, there's also evidence that Nimrod himself traveled to modern-day Italy and hunted wolves in the mountains there of Apennine Mountains. These mountains were at one time known as the Mountains of Nimrod. As a sequel to the celebration of the Saturnalia, the Lupercalia was conducted in the spring and regarded as a festival of purification and fertility. The official ceremony took place in Rome at the cave of Lupercal, where it is said that the founders of Rome, Romulus and Remus, were nurtured by a she-wolf during their early years of life. The religious ceremonies of the Lupercalia were directed by Luperci, meaning brothers of the wolf, and these were priests of Faunus. The festivities began with Vestal virgins offering cakes called mola salsa. Two naked young men, assisted by the Vestals, then sacrificed a dog and one or two goats at the site. The blood from the victims was then smeared on the foreheads of the young men and wiped off with wool or goat's hair dipped in milk. A sacrificial feast followed, after which the youths would then gird themselves with loincloths made from the goat's skin. A vitally important part of this ritual were whips called februa that were also made from the goatskin hide. The young men were then to begin laughing as they gallivanted around the hilly boundaries of the city, striking men and women with the februa who would line up along the way. This act was believed to provide fertility, easy childbirth, and protection from curses or bad luck to anyone whom the februa touched. It is said that some women would even bare their nakedness to the februa in hopes of obtaining better results. Publius Ovidius Naso, commonly known as Ovid, a famous Latin poet who lived during the time of Christ, he mentioned this act of striking women with the februa in one of his poems regarding the Lupercalia, and he wrote, "Neither potent herbs, nor prayers, nor magic spells shall make of thee a mother. Submit with patience to the blows dealt by a fruitful hand." This fertility festival was accompanied by rowdiness and horseplay, and one can easily imagine the depravity of the scene as half-naked youths dressed only in goatskin covering their loins frolicked around the city and countryside, slapping men, women, and young girls with a whip to encourage fertility. It's not difficult to surmise that fornication would have quickly followed this ceremony, in which it was believed that the women had just been made miraculously fertile. Another name to add to the list of those honored during the Lupercalia was Faunus, and the description given him provides insight into the supposed purification involved.
Okay, so I got to take a break here, and we are going to come back. I find what he says quite interesting, and I couldn't have said it better myself. In fact, he says it much better than I could, and I'm getting a little lesson myself on a lot of this stuff. I hope you enjoy it, and if you put a candy order in, or you haven't bought any candy, maybe you'll think twice about it, huh? Well, anyway, I don't want to ruin your Valentine's Day. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of history on where it comes from, and then you decide whether you want to have a happy Valentine's Day. Okay, we'll be back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal. Remember this, go to my website at arcticbeacon.com. Also go to freetonyalamo.com and see what we're up to there as far as getting a Christian pastor out of prison. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. you will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the Supreme Jesuit Command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal. And before I get back to the truth about Valentine's Day, let me mention two things. One, this is National Pet Adoption Week or Weekend coming up February 17th through 19th. So if you're looking for someone who'll give you unconditional love and you want to adopt a pet, remember this is a good weekend for it. Secondly, before I get back to the Valentine's Day story, I have to update you a little bit on what is the Oroville Dam and why 200,000 people have been evacuated from California. Now, California's it has more people here than all of Canada, so at least 200,000 people living downstream have been evacuated from California's Oroville Dam, and they were ordered to evacuate Sunday, haven't returned yet, and things aren't looking good. Now, first of all, someone asked me, well, what is the Oroville Dam? And I have to get to that in a second. Let me pull that up so you understand this story. Okay, quickly here, the Oroville Dam is the tallest dam in the USA and a critical piece of California's water system. It lies at the foothills of the Sierra Nevada, east of the Sacramento Valley, about 150 miles northeast of San Francisco. It was completed in 1968 and is basically very important to the California water system. As you can hear the water right now flowing, right? Okay, in the first half hour I explained why the dam is about to break, and it's basically through negligence. They have not repaired it. It's an old dam. And the real question is, what does it matter for the state? And here's what was said by Peter Glick, a water researcher at the Oakland-based Pacific Institute. Quote, "It would be a massive blow to the state's water system if they lose Oroville. The question is, will it erode away the emergency spillway? Will there be a big uncontrolled release of water, or will they be able to draw the lake down enough to prevent that?" That's what's happening right now, and there's a big, huge storm coming in the next couple days, so we'll have to watch this story closely. But it will have a huge effect, not only billions of dollars, but also 100-foot waves of water coming to these communities nearby. And it probably will affect the water system here in Southern California. So watch that story. Okay, we have to get back to the Valentine's Day, the truth about Valentine's Day. Okay, here we go. The truth about Valentine's Day.
The Encyclopedia Britannica of World Religions describes Faunus as an ancient Italian world deity whose attributes in Roman times were identified with those of the Greek god Pan. Faunus was originally worshipped in the countryside as a bestower of fruitfulness on fields and flocks. A grandson of Saturn, Faunus was typically represented as half man, half goat. Like Pan, Faunus was associated with merriment, and his twice-yearly festivals were marked by revelry and abandon. At the Lupercalia, a festival held partly in his honor each February in Rome, well into the Christian era, youths clothed as goats ran through the streets wielding strips of goatskin. Another pagan god of old worshipped at this time was Februus, a god of the dead and purification. In his honor, the Februalia festivities were held around the same time as the Lupercalia. Februus and Juno Februata were also known as gods of Febris, a word meaning fever, and this of course refers to the fever of love or hot passion. The widely used expression of being lovesick today quite possibly came from this term Febris. Because of the many gods and similarities in festivities during the month of February in ancient time, the deities worshipped at that time were often confused with one another, and sometimes they were thought of as the same. We now begin to see that even the title of our month, February, gives insight into the practice of ancient Roman and false god worship. According to dictionary.com, the word February comes from the Latin februarius and literally means the month of purification, so named in reference to the Roman feast of purification held on the Ides of the month. Now that we see where the supposed love part of Valentine's Day came from, let's consider one of the most famous customs of our modern observance: Valentine cards. Can this sweet, sentimental gesture also be found in ancient heathen practice? Ladies and gentlemen, the truth, it's going to shock you. Another festivity of ancient times connected to the Lupercalia was surnamed the Lover's Lottery. Celebrated by the youth on the eve of the Lupercalia on February 14th, this ritual was in honor of Juno Februata. Designated as the goddess of love and marriage and childbirth, Juno's festivals were commonly orgiastic rites of fertility, and the Lover's Lottery, it was no different. During this particular ceremony, names of teenage girls were written down and placed in urns or jars. A teenage boy would then draw a name out of the two, and the two would be paired, forming a temporary liaison for dancing, merrymaking, and erotic games at feasts and parties throughout Rome. After the festival, they would remain partners for the rest of the year, and this sometimes resulted in marriage. James Hastings writes of this celebration in the Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics, Volume 3. The custom of Valentine's Day has been handed down from the Roman festival of the Lupercalia, celebrated in the month of February, when the names of young women were put into a box and drawn out by men as chance directed. This is the origin of Valentine's cards, linking men and women together for sexual purposes. This festival was characterized in the later Roman period by wanton raillery and unkindled freedom. This custom was observed in the Roman Empire for centuries. It was a tradition performed in anticipation of the rites of spring, a celebration of youthful love. During the medieval days of chivalry, the lovers' lottery became very popular in England. There, the names of maidens and bachelors were put into separate boxes and drawn out in pairs. The girl then became the man's Valentine for a year. The male often wore his Valentine's name on his sleeve, and the old adage to wear your heart on your sleeve, it means that it's easy for other people to know how you are feeling. This saying is derived from a tradition observed during the medieval lovers' lottery, where one could easily see the name of the girl the male was to care for on his sleeve. Down through time, this heathen practice has continued to evolve. And during the 17th century, celebrants began to exchange love notes, known today as Valentine cards. Today, a card is one of the most common gifts of Valentine's Day. Millions of people across the globe, they exchange cards expressing fondness and love or desire for another person, and few realize where this practice actually came from. The giving of a card to another person stating, "Will you be my Valentine?" it's no less than an extension of an ancient practice in honor of the goddess Juno, resulting in unbridled sexual license. Interestingly, a modern expression of this ancient ritual takes place in thousands of elementary schools across America each year. Not desiring anyone to be left out by not receiving a Valentine card, many teachers will put all the names of their students into a box and draw out names of those who are to give one another a Valentine that year. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, the puzzle pieces of our modern Valentine's Day celebration, they're beginning to form a clear picture.
Okay, now, please, nothing has changed for me. Let me interrupt for a second. I told you when I was younger, I didn't realize this was a pagan holiday, but I never got any Valentine's cards then. And please, please, don't send me any. I haven't gotten any yet today. So really, nothing has changed, and I will promise you I'm not sending anybody any candy, any flowers, any big teddy bears, or even a card. So please, do not wish me a happy Valentine's Day. Back to the truth about Valentine's Day.
And you need to understand the truth about this ungodly holiday, and you can understand the truth. To help you, The World to Come produces a variety of informative free literature. Today, we would like to offer you the booklet entitled The Truth About Valentine's Day. It will explain how this holiday came into existence, why it is celebrated on February 14th, and who instituted it as a supposed Christian holiday. It will reveal the origins of many symbols surrounding this holiday, including Cupid, Valentine cards, and how this holiday got its name. Stay tuned, and at the end of this program, we'll tell you how to receive your free copy of The Truth About Valentine's Day. So far, we have learned that Valentine's Day is rooted in the ancient Roman pagan festival known as the Lupercalia and the Lover's Lottery.
Okay, so he's giving that away free, so no big deal. And I guess you could learn something. I'm just going to listen to the video. I'm not going to get the book. But anyway, here we go.
We have also seen that this festival included many false gods that can be traced all the way back to ancient Babylon. Putting all these facts together, a trail through time begins to emerge. The early fertility festivals transitioned into our modern expressions. The roots of Valentine's Day are found deeply embedded in ancient pagan purification and fertility festivals, and by following the footprints of this so-called love holiday, they lead to the founder of paganism and mystery religion, Nimrod. And so the question you must be thinking is, how did all of this become acceptable? How did it become church-sanctioned, practices that we observe today openly? Well, like many secular holidays observed by this world, the Lover's Lottery and the celebration of the Lupercalia were eventually dressed in Christian apparel. St. Valentine's Day and the traditions associated with it are the result of an attempt by the Roman Catholic Church to whitewash a pagan custom. This process began during the 4th century, when Emperor Constantine made Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire. And by this act, vast numbers of pagans began to stream into the church. The clergy made attempts to convert the pagans from their cherished heathen holidays, but the reality of such a task was insurmountable. In an attempt to bridge this gap, the church decided to give the pagan festivals a makeover, if you will. In his book, Popular Antiquities of Great Britain, John Brand states this well-known fact. Thus, at the first promulgation of Christianity to the Gentile nations, they, the Gentiles, could not be persuaded to relinquish many of their superstitions, which rather than forego altogether, they chose to blend and incorporate with the new faith. Ladies and gentlemen, for almost every pagan ceremony, some rite was introduced by the apostate Roman Church. They took it upon themselves to sanction the transference of pagan holidays to so-called Christian celebrations, and it's refuted by God throughout the Scriptures, as he states, "Take heed to thyself, that thou be not snared by following them, after they be destroyed from before thee, and that thou inquire not after their gods, saying, How did these nations serve their gods? Even so will I do likewise. Thou shalt not do so unto the Lord thy God, for every abomination to the Lord which he hateth have they done unto their gods." Despite God's word condemning such practices, the apostate church moved forward in trying to whitewash pagan festivals. When it came to the Lupercalia and the Lover's Lottery, there were initially 2 rituals instituted by the Catholic Church, and these were done in the month of February. Both of these were designed to replace similar festivals observed by the pagans. In the book, Customs and Holidays Around the World, author Lavinia Dogther states that, as far back as 496, Pope Gelasius changed Lupercalia on February 15th to St. Valentine's Day on February 14th. This statement is only one of many sources confirming that in the year 496 AD, Pope Gelasius attempted to do away with the Lupercalia and the Lover's Lottery because of their pagan and immoral practices. Soon afterwards, the Church instituted a lottery of saints to replace the Lover's Lottery, and they also created a new feast, the Purification of the Virgin Mary, known today as Candlemas. The saintly lottery was one in which the names of girls were substituted with the names of saints, and the young people would then draw a name out of an urn or a box, and for the following year they would study and attempt to emulate the saint whose name they had chosen. Alban Butler writes of this practice in his book, The Lives of the Saints. To abolish the heathen lewd superstitions, customs of boys drawing the names of girls in honor of their goddess Februata Juno on the 15th of February, several zealous pastors changed it into giving billets with the names of certain saints for them to honor and imitate in a particular manner. In an attempt to change the pagan symbolism of fertility and purification during the month of February, the Roman Church adopted another festival called the Feast of the Purification of the Virgin Mary. Regarding this festival, the Catholic Encyclopedia states the following. 40 days after the birth of Christ, Mary complied with this precept of the law. She redeemed her firstborn from the temple, and was purified by the prayer of Simeon the Just in the presence of Anna the prophetess. No doubt this event, the first solemn introduction of Christ into the house of God, was in the earliest times celebrated in the Church of Jerusalem. But the feast then had no proper name. It was simply called the 40th day after Epiphany. This latter circumstance proves that in Jerusalem, Epiphany was then the feast of Christ's birth. In the statement we have just read, the Catholic Church admits to observing this day of purification. In an attempt to justify themselves, they state that, in their opinion, this event had always been celebrated by the yearly church in Jerusalem, but the feast had no proper name. Consider, ladies and gentlemen, that if such a holiday was ever observed by the apostles in the New Testament church, there would have been some mention of it in their writings in the New Testament. What they are trying to hide is that this feast, it was observed, but by pagans for centuries before the birth of Christ. They were striving to conceal this fact because their celebrations were not proper, and they actually had a name, the Lupercalia. The church simply wanted to deny any connection with this ancient pagan celebration. However, despite the attempted cover-up, there are many documents showing a connection between their introduced holiday observances and the February pagan festivities. The online encyclopedia, Wikipedia, states that Gelasius finally suppressed the ancient Roman festival of the Lupercalia after a long contest. Galasius' letter to Andromachus, the senator, covers the main lines of the controversy and incidentally offers some details of this festival combining fertility and purification that might have otherwise been lost. Significantly, the February Lupercalia was replaced with a festival celebrating the purification and fertility of the Virgin Mary instead. Ladies and gentlemen, this confirms that not only did Pope Galasius replace the Lupercalia with the celebration of Mary's fertility and purification, but that his letter to a state official describing the controversy had helped to preserve the details of the Lupercalia that might have otherwise been lost. It becomes clear that these pagan festivals were reframed as professing Christian observances. It is evident that St. Valentine's Day was introduced in an attempt to give the pagan feasts a facelift, if you will, thus Christianizing another licentious festival. But why did the Church pick Valentine? Just who is this supposed saint? Well, today, the Catholic Church recognizes at least 3 different saints known as Valentine, but the facts behind the events and martyrdom of all these Valentines, they're murky, to say the least. They might better be described as myth, for when they're studied in detail, it appears that conflicting and different stories have been collected concerning them. The legends do contain a sense of heroic romanticism, but many historians believe that they were simply fabrications, enabling the Church to retain the appeal of the pagan February feast by changing their sexual meaning to a more acceptable image of love and purity. While the origin of this holiday becomes clear, some may still feel that there's no harm in observing such things. After all, surely its original meaning has no influence on us as a sophisticated modern society. With this perspective in mind, let's read what God says about such things. Woe unto them that call evil good, and good evil, that put darkness for light, and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet, and sweet for bitter. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot take something that comes from evil and call it good. We cannot take that which was born in darkness and look to it as light. We cannot take the bitterness of paganism and wrap it in a box of chocolates and call it sweet. If you're wondering what you should do, ladies and gentlemen, the answer to this question, it lay within the pages of your Bible. It is there where we find the instruction manual for mankind, the roadmap to God's kingdom. Don't believe the teachings and doctrines of men, and ladies and gentlemen, do not believe me. Open your Bible, search it out, and there you will find the words of truth and hope and true love. When Jesus Christ walked this earth, he prophesied of many future events, and what such prophecy explains how false teachers would claim that they represent him, but they would lead people astray. Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. Jesus was not speaking of people who would come claiming that they were the prophesied Messiah. He was telling his followers to be aware, because many will come and profess that Jesus was the Christ. And by doing this, they would convince many that they were in fact teaching the true ways of God, and they would pervert the faith, deceiving them. And this is precisely what has occurred. False teachers have brought damnable heresies like the celebration of Christmas, Sunday worship, and St. Valentine's Day right into the church. The Apostle Paul also addresses such heretical teachers and teachings, and he says this, For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness. Ladies and gentlemen, if you were to meet Satan or one of his demons on the street today, they would not appear as some hideous monster with horns and scales, claws, and fang-like teeth. Rather, they would probably be clean-cut, handsome, polite, and friendly. Someone you might consider having a cup of coffee with. Most people have no idea how great a deceiver Satan can be. The scriptures state that he has actually deceived the whole world. And it should be of no surprise that the celebrations he promotes appear to us as beautiful, fun, and good. We must not fall prey to the deceits of false ministers and the devil. We have a choice to follow the ways of God or to follow the ways of men and the heathen. And the Lord cries out to us, saying, "Do not follow the commandments of men and learn not the way of the heathen." We cannot be divided in our obedience and our loyalty. We cannot serve false gods no matter how long ago they were worshipped, no matter how cloaked they may be, and no matter how beautiful and fun their holidays may seem. Ladies and gentlemen, the truth is, Valentine's Day is a slap in the face to God, who is love. You need to know the truth about this holiday, and you can know the truth.
Okay, wow. That was a good lesson, I think, and hope you enjoyed it and learned something. And, of course, make up your own mind. Read the Bible, check out all the sources, check it all out, and then come back to me and tell me what you think about this show. You can contact me at Greg Beacon, that's Beacon, Greg Beacon at gmail.com. And please, no Valentine cards, okay? I think I've made up my mind a long time ago, even before I knew it was a pagan holiday, for selfish reasons. And I'm glad the Bible backs me up on that. I have a good argument now, not just my frailty as a human being. Okay, so one thing I mentioned earlier, check out that story about the Oroville Dam. I think it's important, and I'm going to be following that. But I do need some help, and it's not with Valentine's Day. I mentioned earlier this is Pet Adoption Week. And recently I lost a really good friend and someone who gave me unconditional love for 14 years, Miss Moose, my Labrador, who was a great friend of Max, my Malamute now, who only knew her. He came aboard when she was 4 or 5 years old, and it was like his mother. And he is really lost. He spends every moment next to me now. When I go out, he's looking for other dogs to play with, and I'm torn between getting him a friend or not getting him a friend. And I mean this from very deeply. It may not be a big deal to you, but it's a big deal to me. I feel guilty, in a sense, of getting another dog, as if I'm saying, Miss Moose, you weren't that important. But I do want to help my Malamute friend who's lonely. He needs dog companionship. I'm not good enough. Oh, yes, I am, but you know what I'm talking about. So if you have any advice, don't hesitate and contact me at gregbeacon at gmail.com, and we can talk about this. Maybe you were in the same situation, and really, that's something I really could use some help on. So hope you enjoyed the show. Back tomorrow on The Investigative Journal at FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Go to my website, arcticbeacon.com, and see you tomorrow.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie, with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character, as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy, in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, To get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.